So we are going to talk about creating moments of joint attention and how to do that most effectively and get the most out of it. So with all our presentations, we have to read the MHSA disclosure because this is done under a grant. So the presentation is provided by Redwood Coast Regional Center and funded through the Mental Health Service Act grant, the FAST grant, in partnership with the California Department of Developmental Services. Redwood Coast Regional Center is solely responsible for the content of this presentation. The Department of Developmental Services has not developed, reviewed, endorsed, or approved the content. So for our learning objectives, we will be defining joint attention and identifying the related skills, gaining an understanding of prerequisite skills for joint attention, learning why joint attention is important in the development of language, social cognition, and relationships, and learn lots of strategies that can help you get the most out of play and moments of joint attention with your children. That's what we'll spend the majority of the hour, is focusing on what we do instead of just talking about what it is. So what is joint attention? When one person coordinates his or her focus of attention with another person, it's known as joint attention. So whenever we're looking at an object together, or we're talking about a conversation together, anything where we're attending to together, we're looking at moments of joint attention. So during moments of joint attention, people can share interest in an object, an activity, a concept, talking about a person or an event that they're sharing. When we look at little guys, we're looking at more concrete joint attention, which is really more about playing with an object together, looking at a book together. As children get older and develop more skills, joint attention can be more like sharing a conversation or something that is not physically present. We can start to do sharing songs and things like that, and babies can grab onto that sharing of a song too, but it's just as they developmentally get older, the things that we can attend to jointly grow and can become more abstract. So infants learn about the world around them by watching and interacting with others through joint attention. So all of our babies, as they develop, they're looking at us. They look at our faces. They look at what we're looking at. They respond to our reactions to things. And that's really how they learn to navigate the world, is by their interactions with their parents. Between 6 and 12 months, babies begin to really coordinate their attention to parents and to objects in our environment. And by about 18 months, joint attention is pretty well ingrained as a skill developmentally for our little ones. Joint attention is a social skill, and it's a critical skill for social development, language acquisition, and cognitive development. I'm going to talk a little bit about, when we get into it too, about how joint attention, although it's social, joint attention really can talk, it really kind of includes when our kids are looking at us to get needs met as well. So examples of joint attention, being able to look at another person's eyes and face in order to get information, like how that person feels. What is that person looking at? What is the person trying to do? So like a really easy example for little ones is like, a toddler goes into an environment and they may not be very sure of what to do in that environment, or they get to the door and they look and they're freaked out by it. Most oftentimes they'll look up at us. They look up at us to see what our reaction is. Are we telling them it's okay, we can go in? Or are we saying, no, 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 no? And they respond to whatever reaction we're giving them. So it's kind of like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to look to you. I'm going to get information from your action, and then I'll mirror that action. And that's a lot how our toddlers and our little ones navigate the world, is by responding to the way and matching their emotion and their reaction to ours. That's the mama that just asked for the link. Okay, so being able to sustain joint attention requires frequent shifting in eye gaze in order to monitor what it is that we're looking at or that we're sharing together, and then looking back at that other person's actions. We go back and forth. We go between the object or the concept and then our partner. And it requires kind of rapid back and forth shifting. And that's how you can kind of tell that they're really engaging with us and with the toy. So I have a short little video. This is a little baby. Let's see, hopefully you guys can see it good. This is just some examples. Let me see if I can, oh, I'm not gonna be able to skip the commercial. Examples of what joint attention looks like or can look like with little ones. You see this and hear it, okay, right?
From about 6 months, infants can start to involve external objects in face-to-face interaction. Progress in their motor development, for example, sitting up on their own or crawling, enables them to reach and touch different things in their surroundings. When an infant and their caregiver both coordinate their attention to a specific object or event and are aware that they are both doing so, we say they are in joint attention.
Què són aquestes joguines? Oh, això vols? Tinc les claus del cotxe, que són meves. Mira què fa aquesta, mira. Un pito.
Episodes of joint attention are the ideal setting in which babies can come to understand how people use words. When adults and babies are interested in the same object and the adult talks about its name or its main features, it is particularly easy for babies to pick up on the function of what the adult is saying.
Qui és aquesta nena? Qui és aquesta nena?
Taking time to engage in face-to-face interaction and joint attentional episodes in which you talk to your baby about what you are both sharing together is important for language development.
Que fa musiqueta?
Talking about things that have stimulated your baby's curiosity is especially helpful.
What's the name?
So as you can see in those examples, I mean, it's really joint attention is really where learning occurs. It's those moments when our baby is with us and when they, oh, why are we playing? Hold on. I'm gonna move you guys out of the way here.
Why is joint attention so important?
The screen is blocking me. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Put your pictures in front of my management. So those moments that they're with us is when the learning is happening, when we can label things for them, when we can give them our emotions, when we mirror stuff for them. And I think it skipped ahead a slide. Boy, when it is in full size, it's hard to go back and forth. So prerequisites for joint attention. So before a baby is really able to engage in purposeful joint attention with us, they need to understand social referencing. And social referencing is that idea that there's a reason to look at mommy or daddy, that I can get information by engaging and understanding that that is an important thing to do. So for social referencing, that's when our baby learns to turn their head to our voice, right? To look when they hear us, to start to shift their gaze around. They look at people, they're looking at objects, they look at back and forth, they see something that catches their attention, and then they look to the parent to see if the parent's attention is on the same thing. when we mirror our faces, when we look right over our little ones and we smile and hold that smile, and then they mirror that smile back. That's when we're starting to see that social referencing happen. And that's a prerequisite for joint attention. So when you hear me refer to it throughout the rest of the time, I'll probably just say referencing, because I tend to use referencing, not just for social referencing, but also referencing to get a need met. So there is a difference, and we'll talk about it as we go, but our little ones reference us not just with things that they're curious about or grab their attention, but when they need something, right? When they need a bottle, or when they want a toy, or when there's something that they want from us, they can learn to reference us because we're the holder of that information. We'll get more into that as we go. So referencing before joint attention. I'm going to break down a super simple activity just to give you a sense of how much is happening during a moment of joint attention. So the one that I chose is a very simple, simplistic, early in life. Baby is being held by mommy. Mommy has the bottle. Baby's looking at the bottle. Baby's changing view between looking at the bottle, paying attention to what's happening in their body, and seeing mommy's face, right? And mommy is paying attention to the bottle staying in baby's mouth and also attending to baby and doing lots of things, right? So the things I listed out are mommy is shifting eye gaze, or the baby's shifting their eye gaze back and forth from the bottle to mommy. Mommy or baby is hearing mommy sounds, because usually when we're feeding our baby, we're talking to we're singing, we're doing something engaging. The baby is feeling comfort and the satiation from the food and from mommy holding them, okay? And all together, what's happening is the baby's brain is processing all of that incoming information, the touch, the sound, the satiation from eating, and it comes in as one nice, lovely shared experience. And the baby's brain is learning that mommy is a source of food. The bottle is a source of food, but I get that from mommy. Mommy's touch is making me feel comfortable and safe. Mommy is somebody who can provide comfort. Mommy's sounds are pleasurable, right? And the baby attunes to those and will start to mimic them. And the baby's brain is really attending to all of that stimulus at the same time and learning to be able to put that together and filter out the background, right? My focus is right here. My focus is on mommy and what's happening right now. And if people are talking in the background, it may capture their attention, but what the brain is working on is learning to filter, okay? So there's lots and lots of stuff that is happening when we're in that moment of joint attention with our little one. I'm going to go back to that in a minute, but I want to break down some more concepts first. So there is a distinction, like I was saying, between the social joint attention and our little ones requesting something. So our little ones will point to things that they want, or they'll look at something that catches their attention. They look back at us, right? I use the word imperative, that they're trying to get an imperative need met, something that we have something that they want. That is considered attending for a request. They're looking at us to get a need met. Social joint attention is when they're pointing out something because they want to share with us. They want to know what we think about it, right? That toy right there is super interesting to me. I'm staring at it. Now I'm going to look at mommy and see if it's interesting to mommy too. Okay. That idea of I want to share my interesting experience with you. What makes me curious, does it make you curious? Okay. It's more about being with that person in terms of understanding the social situation. For a child with autism or a child with a neurological processing disorder, or to children who are born hard of hearing or sight impaired, the social part of joint attention is not nearly as ingrained. And the reason is because of all of the stuff that has to happen. Okay, there's so much processing that's happening, and they're not getting the full, complete package processed as one memory, like the baby I was just explaining. When mommy is holding baby and the baby's eating and all of that stuff is coming into the brain as a nice fluid package. For our children with neurological processing, it doesn't come in as this nice cohesive package. Okay, it comes in somehow disorganized in some way, confused in the brain in some way. And what our babies do is pull away. And I'm moving ahead in my slide. I'm going to get back to it, but there is a reason why the social aspects of joint attention are harder for our kiddos. Okay, but there is definitely a distinction between them interacting with us to get a need met, the imperative need, and them interacting with us for the social reason, just being able to share an experience. There is also a difference between the child responding to an adult's attempt to get their attention and the child initiating joint attention. So for a child responding to another person, you'll maybe looking at like a parent and a child are playing together. The parent looks at a toy and says, "Look at the car." And the baby responds, the child responds by looking at the parent's gaze and looking at the car, and then maybe smiling back at the parent. But that is the parent grabbing their child's attention. When a child initiates, it would be more like the child has a toy in their hand, they're playing with it, they're interested in it, and then they look up at mommy and go, "Huh," and hand over the toy, or grab mommy's attention to see, "Hey, look at what I've got. Is this cool to you?" Same thing when they pick up things. A toddler maybe wandering through the park and pick up something they shouldn't pick up, like some kind of dog poop or like a snail or something like that. And then what you hope is that they look at you before they put it in their mouth, so you can go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." And then you hope the baby responds to your cue of saying, "That's not what we want to do with that," right? Drop it down. For our children with developmental delays, the initiating part of joint attention is the weaker area. Okay, they will respond easier than they will initiate. And it goes back again to how much understanding they're getting from the social interaction with us. So some of the risk conditions for deficits in joint attention: autism, like I said, deaf, blind, and infants who experience early adversity or neglect, where they don't have that trusting relationship with a parent to look at to learn. They learn to navigate the world more on their own. And that is the case for autism, kids who are deaf, kids who are blind, and kids who have had neglect. They learn more about the world on their own than is really super beneficial. Okay. And so what I want to do today is spend the majority of the time talking about how to create really good joint attention with our kiddos who have these kind of delays. Because there's definitely good ways of doing it. It just takes a little bit more thought, quite frankly. And again, I've got you guys in front of my slides. How developmental differences can affect joint attention. So going back to that episode, the example of the baby and the mom being fed. So our kiddos with autism spectrum, I'm going to use autism for this one. And actually the seeing inside will go, sorry, this actually does respond to deaf or blind too. So for a kiddo who's got some impairments, when we're looking at mommy's face, it's possible that mommy looking at us and smiling and making nice faces, the baby isn't seeing that face as a whole image. Our kiddos with autism tend to focus visually on parts of a whole. So they may be looking at just your eyes or just your nose or just your mouth, and that's what's capturing their interest, but they're not getting on a processing level the concept that the whole face is showing me pleasure, right? Or if they're sight impaired, they may not be able to see mommy's face at all. So when this happens, the baby is missing the opportunity to mimic mommy's face. And then learning that smiles are associated with pleasure. So when that is happening, the baby isn't necessarily learning to look at other people's faces to gain information. They're not getting the same message as a child who doesn't have a processing deficit, right? The same can be said for the sound. So it's possible that a baby is hypersensitive to sound, like they hear it too loud, or they're hyposensitive, they hear it too quietly, or they're not able to filter out background noises. So like somebody else in the room may be watching TV while the baby's being fed, or they're near a window and there's commotion outside, or there's dogs barking. All of those things can distract from the baby's ability to process the pleasurable voice of mommy, and for the brain to associate mommy's pleasurable voice with this nice experience of being fed. So what starts to happen sometimes is that our babies will turn away from the sound when they don't understand it, or it's coming in too loud. They'll shift away from it as a coping mechanism. Okay. They may cry, they may make sounds of their own to drown out the others, because their brain can hear their sound louder than everybody else's sound. So what our kiddos do is they start to compensate for what the brain doesn't process properly by turning away from it oftentimes. When I show you some examples later, I think I have an example of it. I'm pretty sure I have a video example of it. What our kiddos do to let us know that they don't understand. And I do want to make a pretty good point of pointing that out to you guys, because the term I tend to use with people is breakdown in attention, but a breakdown in attention is very subtle often. Like when we're trying to get our children's attention, we're trying to interact with them and they turn away from us, it's a good thing to start to look at is there something that just captured their attention that was more exciting? Or did they turn away because they don't understand or they're not processing? Is it too much language? There's a lot of questions that we should start running through our head to try and figure out what it is that's causing them to shift away from us in that moment. Because it's not the same for any two kids. Everybody processes a little bit differently, and it's a little bit of a game to figure out what it is that's upsetting your little one or causing them to pull away. And this is a total diversion from my notes, but in my many years of doing this, one of the things that I've often heard people say, especially when the kiddos diagnosed later with autism, is that their baby was colicky, that they are a colicky baby when they were little. What I like to say to parents is, instead of just accepting that it's a baby that's colicky, look at what it is that's really happening, because oftentimes it's a processing problem. It's the touch is being over or under regulated. The sound is not coming in nice to them. And the crying and what appears to be colic is them letting us know that something their brain is not processing cohesively and nicely, and it's upsetting to their system. So side note, but I think it's important. So the question of the hour, since we know that joint attention is vital to a child's development, how do we help a child with processing deficits still engage and learn from others instead of trying to navigate the world on their own? So let's talk about how we're going to get the most out of it. So there's lots of things I want to talk about in terms of getting your child's attention. But first things first, we need to look at like what the common point of interest is. So we're going to talk about how we choose what it is that we use as our point of reference when we're interacting with them, how development comes into play. We'll talk about environmental prompts, proximity, which is how close you are or where you are in space to them, and then gestures and sounds. So common point of reference, there are many, many opportunities throughout the day to engage in joint attention with our little ones. The younger they are, the more the naturalistic opportunities become really important. So especially for infants, feeding time is a really, really great time to start to kind of work on the joint attention and how close should we be and what is the sound that we're making and how we're holding them. Diaper changing, toileting, brushing their teeth, getting dressed. These are all times when you already naturally will get your child's attention because these are physiological needs. So if any of you guys are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, it's like a triangle, and at the base of the triangle is our physiological need. Our kiddos need those needs met before they can focus in any other realm. So if they're hungry, we got to feed them before we can get them to play with us. Otherwise, they're not going to attend very well to playing because they're hungry, right? Same if they're tired. So physiological needs, they need us. They're aware that they need us most of the time. And it's an opportunity, an excellent opportunity to engage with them. They are those times when people will say, well, joint attention is really about social interaction. Yes, you could make this social at the same time that it's going back to that getting the need met kind of thing, because those are just naturally motivating times to be in there with them. Infants are naturally curious and motivated to learn. So it's really good to sit back and just watch them. Watch what they do. What is it that is catching their attention? So are they a newborn and their attention is caught by the dust that they see floating in the sunlight, right? Or a toddler who's seeing a dance on the TV and they're trying to mimic the dance, or they're playing with a car. It's really watch what catches them. And then learning whether or not your little one really likes fast-paced activities, or do they respond better when things are a little bit slower? What kind of sounds do they like? Are there sounds that upset them? Are there sounds that make them pull away from us? What things do our little ones draw our attention to? What are they trying to show you? The idea with picking a common point of reference is that you want it to be something that is already of interest to your child, right? Not to say you can't show them new things. You can definitely do that, get to the joint attention, but in terms of getting in there and starting at just working on joint attention from, just trying to get it going, it's really a better idea to jump into their already existing activities, the things that interest them. Before I go into this next one of the caveats to picking something that is of interest to them, shy away from things that grab their attention so much that you can't get in there. For example, electronics, videos, things that the child can navigate completely on their own without you. Because the idea when you're working on joint attention activities is that you're part of the activity with your little one. So if the object that you guys are sharing is so engaging to the child that they don't look at you, that is not a good object to be using, because you're going to struggle to stay engaged with them in their point of attention. You're going to push you off to the side, and that thing becomes where their focus is at, right? And the idea with joint attention activities is that the focus is really on you, and that thing that you're doing together, that song, that toy that you're playing with, that is a vehicle that you guys can use to share attention, but that you're just as interesting or more interesting than the object itself. So that's how we kind of what we choose. Once we've decided what we're going to interact with, or what toy it is, what song we're going to do, it's important to match your interaction with your little ones' developmental level. So do what your child does. Say what your child says. Match your amount of language with their amount of language. If they're using single words, try and mirror single words, or maybe use 2 words if we're trying to get a little more language out of them. But the idea is to kind of stay right in that range where they're at. The reason is because that starts to help build our child's feeling of competence, that they can understand where we are, that we are with them on their ability level, and it makes it so you can teach just little bits at a time, right? They use 1 word, we use 1 word, and then we start adding in that second. They use 2 words, we start 2 words, and we add in that third. So you can start with the language development, concept development. But if we go in there and what we're doing, they can't understand, or we're using too many words, or it's too advanced, you will see them pull away from you. Like I was saying, that's that joint attention breakdown, where they're letting us know, I don't get it. I don't know what you want me to do. I don't understand. This isn't engaging for me. Right? So some ways to match your child are to play the same activity that they're playing. They're reading a book or they're flipping through something, sit down next to them and point to the book with them and mirror words, or pick up the toy and play with the toy with them. Don't hesitate to act like a child when you play. If your kiddo's dancing and making fun moves, do it with them, mirror it. It allows them, again, that idea of the self-confidence starts to build up when they see mommy doing the same thing that we're doing. That is very empowering, and they can control the interaction, right? Play more than you talk. Gestures, sounds, things that we want them to learn, that's what we need to mirror for them. So when we are talking, it's more about giving them that language, like the video that we watched where the dad is showing the baby the mirror and telling them this is the mirror, right? This is, we're seeing ourselves, and using words just about what is happening in that moment, right? We just call out what is happening. When you're with your child and you wonder how to get an interaction going, remember this: when in doubt, imitate. And it's totally the thing. Just get in there and do what they're doing. Some things that are important to think about, which oftentimes get glazed over, or not taught at all, is simple prompts. People don't think of environment as a prompt, but it is. How we control our environment has a direct effect on how well our little one can attend to what we're trying to get them attend to. So minimizing distractions so that the baby can focus on that point of attention, that common point of reference that you're wanting to get them to engage in with you, is the focus. So it's a good thing, especially with our kiddos who have processing deficits, when we're trying to work on joint attention with them, do it in a space that's free of background noises as much as possible. So if there's a TV on in the background or in another room, if you can turn it off or turn the volume down or move away from it enough that that sound isn't present anymore. If there's, animals barking, construction, things that are loud, we really want to try and pull away from that as much as possible to get that background noise kind of tuned down so that our little ones can focus more on our sound. If there's a lot of things that are nearby that are of interest to them, it's really hard to gain their attention. So the cleaner around the space that you're in, the better. So if you're playing in your kiddo's playroom, maybe you want to be on the floor. If you're in your bedroom with them, you want to be on the floor. Just push to the side the toys that are within their reach, or the toys that could catch their attention, so that your environment's somewhat cleaned out, so that they're focusing just on what you want them to focus on. The temperature can totally matter, whether the space is really warm or really cold, because again, physiological need becomes the most important. So if we're trying to get them to interact socially with us, but they're physiologically uncomfortable, then that becomes overarching and it will draw their attention away from us. Temperature, we can't always control it, but as much as possible, trying to keep the space comfortable for them. Lighting is also a factor that you can consider. Oftentimes our kiddos with processing deficits are sensitive to specific kinds of lights. It's a sensory sensitivity that will happen. So if it's too bright or it's too dark or we're under fluorescent lights, your little one usually via their body language will let you know if they're having a problem with the lighting. They'll squint, right? They may walk into things. It's just really one of those things to kind of pay attention to as much as you can to try and, again, control the environment so that it's comfortable for them. And then I put time of day on here, not the time of day really as environment, but again, it goes back to that physiological need. There's going to be times a day when your children are more available to interact with you than other times of the day. So strive for those times when you know that they're the most alert and that they're going to be the most successful at engaging. If you're finding when you try and engage with your little one that you are working super hard to get their attention, there is something in your environment that you can tweak, right? Either things that can be pulled away or where we put ourselves in their space. You shouldn't have to work super, super hard to get their attention. And if it's exhausting, it's time to step back, take a second, and ask yourself some of these questions about the environment. Is there something in the environment I need to tweak to make it easier for my little one to focus on me? So I don't have to work so hard or be a monkey show doing all this stuff to draw their attention. I am going to play a very short little clip where the mom is trying to get the baby's attention. It's not that she's doing anything wrong, but you can see environmentally, there's a toy that's causing the little one to not focus super good on mom. And I have to go back out to get to it and move you guys.
I'm just giving you a time check real fast, Wendy. You got about 15 minutes till it's
okay.
back.
We're getting there. Hold on. I got to go back to it. Oh, I'm not going to get any
Give me a
sound.
high five.
Can
Marco,
you
look.
guys see it?
No, shoot me down.
Yes.
Marco, high five. Look. Hello. Marco. Oh. Hi. Can you give me a high five? Marco,
I
look.
can't see
High
it.
five.
Can't see it?
No,
No,
lay down. Marco, high
You
five.
guys see it now?
Look.
No?
Hello.
I
can
just see you
see it.
guys.
Heidi, can you see it?
I
Hi.
just see you guys.
Can you
How
give me a high
strange.
five? Look.
That is.
It seems like Heidi can see it. I can see it. I don't know.
So really what we're seeing is
I
the
just-
baby's
Hello?
attention, as much as
Marco?
mom is trying right now, the baby's attention is really on that little saucer. The baby's got a little saucer or something that she's playing with. And so she does engage for
Oh,
a
no,
quick second
see.
with mom, but mom would have to work a lot less hard if she would just take that little toy away. So it's just a quick example of like how we just remove something and then you're not having to fight for their attention as much. All right, let's go back into here, make it big again. You can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so another super important thing is proximity. Proximity is how close you are to your little one. Where are you in their space? So the ideal proximity for joint attention is not the same for every kiddo. But most commonly, we need to be pretty close when they're young, right? Like we're pretty close to our baby's face oftentimes when we're feeding them and we're mirroring smiles and doing all that stuff. As they get older, we can move further away, and ideally you will, because you want to grow as they grow. You want to work a little harder on them having to attend to us. So where do we put ourselves? Face to face is ideal. If you're sitting side by side with your kiddo and trying to read a story with them or play with a toy, their instead of being able to just look at the object and look back up at us, they look at the object and then we're out of their line of sight, which requires them to have to turn their head to shift attention from the object to us. It's much more difficult for a child to attend when we're sitting at their side as when we're present in their face. So face to face is the best way to start. Now, as they develop and they can do that, you don't need to sit face to face with them. You can sit next to them and read a story and they can still attend to you. But most of the time when we're starting to teach joint attention, side by side isn't how you want to be. The other thing about proximity is watch what happens when you're interacting with them. Some children react very strongly when we're in their space bubble. They will pull away and it makes them feel uncomfortable when we're in their space bubble, which is why, one of these reasons why proximity is different for every kiddo. If you move in and they move away, that's letting you know that didn't make them super comfortable. Try and stay in that realm where they're with you. Okay. Proximity, another one of the tricks that I do, especially when we're having a hard time getting them to attend to an object, put the object that you want them to attend to right next to your line of sight, because joint attention really is about being able to reference your face. You will oftentimes hear people say that joint attention is about looking at the eyes. I don't focus so much on eye contact because oftentimes our children on the spectrum are not comfortable staring at someone's eyes, or staring at someone's eyes does not give them a clear message. But the face in itself, we really do want them looking our direction so that they can see the emotion. So if I'm trying to play with this little ball here with my baby and I want the baby to look at me and the ball, if I put it here and go, here you go, and then I put it back to my eyes, my face and the object are right next to each other. That makes it super easy for our little one to see the object and us at the same time without having to do a lot of physical movement of the back and forth to attend to the object and then the baby, or the object and the mom. Make sense? Okay, gestures and sounds are another thing that really you want to pay attention to. Using an animated voice and exaggerated expressions. When we are subtle, they oftentimes will miss it, especially our kiddos with processing deficits. So when we're happy, make a bigger happy. Hold on to it. Allow them time to observe the face, observe what we're doing, process it, and then mimic it. It seems so oftentimes when we smile at a baby and they smile back that it's just this automatic fast process. But what's happening is they're observing, they're processing, and then they're responding. That can take some time. Give them that time. Right? So if you smile and they don't smile back right away, hold on to it. Keep smiling. Give them a minute. Okay. And then gestural prompting. Okay, so we want babies to learn to follow our pointing. Pointing is super important when it comes to getting joint attention, because in the environment, when we want to draw somebody's attention to something, we'll often point. Pointing, when we're working on developing joint attention, there is a whole like prompting hierarchy on just gesturing. So if I point to an object and the object is really close to me and my face is looking and my fingers going the same direction and I'm pointing right to the object right in front of them, it's very obvious where I'm trying to get them to draw their attention. Pointing to an object without the head gaze and just pointing, we'd like them to be able to attend to that. But when they're first learning, usually the head needs to go with the hand and you need to be close to the object. Hence the idea of it being super close. Right? As they get better and they can start to attend to you pointing with a head gaze, you can point without moving your head. Because ideally what we're trying to get them to get to is the point where they can just follow your eye gaze, where we don't need to move our head. We don't have to point. We just simply can look at something and they'll follow our eye gaze. For a neurotypical adult, most of the time we can do that. It's kind of one of those, like maybe I'm saying something about somebody and they approach me and another person is like with their eyes going, hey, hey, like kind of letting you know they're right there. Sometimes those kind of subtle gestures, all of us will miss. Our kids on the spectrum totally miss those. And so in order to get them to be able to attend more to subtle gestures, we have to build it up. And it goes back to meeting them where they are. What do they need? How obvious does our pointing need to be to get them to draw that attention? And we work on subtly getting that prompt, that pointing less and less, but it's honest, it's as they develop. So let's get playing before we run out of time because, we already have 7 minutes left. So some of the things that are good to play with that work really well, objects, blocks, dolls, trucks, things that they like. Like I said, getting there during a daily routine, doing the stuff that they need to get done. Playing games, roughhousing, peekaboo, tickling, patty cake, row your boat. All those kind of games are really good for back and forth. And they allow you to interact, kind of control the interaction, but allow your child to be an active part of that action at the same time. So when we're playing, we try to take the same number of turns as our children. Okay, turn taking is an important skill that they learn through joint attention. And so we want to be fair with them. So trying to be that balanced partner. They're just as much a part of this as we are. So do something and then wait for your child to take a turn. Like I said, imitate and then wait, smile, wait for them to respond back. I already told you to pay attention to those small behaviors and see what it is that really they're grabbing onto. Allow your child the choice of the activity as much as possible. Kind of get in there, like I was saying, and do what they're doing. If you choose an activity, invite their engagement versus just saying, hey, we're going to play with this, right? The contrived activities become oftentimes more about telling them what to do and getting compliance. And that's not what you're trying to do, is to get them to comply. What you're trying to get them to do is just have a natural, happy, playful engagement with you. So as much as possible, shy away from commanding them, like showing them how to play with the car or directly questioning them. Just mimic their actions, give them the words, and have fun with it. I'm going to skip that next video because I'm worried about time. And if I can, I'll get back to it because it's a really good video. But I want to go back quickly to the pointing because, like I said, focusing on pointing when you're playing and working on joint attention is very important. So we're teaching our children to comment by encouraging them to point to an object, right? Like there's a toy truck. And then we can show them, like, here it is, like, show me truck. Like take their finger, point it to them, show me truck, and then get them to show you, right? You can use the word look throughout the day and get them to point to objects. So you go, look, I see, like if you're going for a walk with your kiddo, walking outside, look up in the tree, and then you point and then you look at them and then look back up and then look and see if they have transferred their gaze to where you're pointing. We're teaching them to direct their attention. Okay. The word look is a really great one to pair with the pointing, to teach them that where somebody is pointing is where we're supposed to draw our attention.